Imagine this quietly unsettling truth. The body can keep moving long after its most important muscles have stopped truly participating. After 60, many people walk every day, believing they are protecting their strength, their balance, their independence. Yet beneath that steady rhythm of steps, the gluteal muscles, designed to stabilize the hips, support the spine, and power upright movement, often remain only partially engaged. This is not failure, it is adaptation. The nervous system, shaped by years of sitting, caution, and subtle pain avoidance, begins to favor efficiency over completeness. Walking becomes familiar, almost automatic, but automatic movement asks very little of muscles that require conscious activation to stay alive in the brain's map of the body. From a scientific perspective, this is not about muscle fibers shrinking first. It is about signals fading first. The brain controls movement through patterns, and patterns that are repeated without intention slowly lose resolution. When walking becomes purely habitual, the glutes often hand over their job to smaller hip muscles or the lower back. The body still moves forward, but the architecture of movement changes. Knees absorb more stress. The spine stiffens to compensate. Balance becomes something we manage rather than something we trust. Weak glutes are rarely the original problem. They are the silent consequence of a nervous system that has stopped prioritizing them. As we age, the brain becomes more conservative with energy. It reduces neural output to areas it no longer perceives as essential. This is why strength loss after 60 can feel sudden, even when lifestyle has not changed dramatically. Walking alone does not challenge this neurological economy. It reinforces what already works. And what already works may not be what protects us long-term. This is where the misunderstanding lies. Movement is not the same as activation. You can move without strengthening, just as you can breathe without truly oxygenating neglected tissues. The glutes, in particular, are deeply connected to our sense of safety and upright presence. They are among the first muscles to disengage when the body feels unstable or cautious. Subtle fear of falling, joint discomfort, or even long years of chair-bound posture teach the nervous system to mute them. Over time, the brain forgets how to recruit them fully. This forgetting is not cognitive, it is biological. Neurons that fire less frequently lose influence. Muscles that receive weaker signals respond by becoming quieter, not necessarily smaller, but less responsive. Walking, while valuable for circulation and cardiovascular health, often occurs in this muted state. The stride shortens. The hips move less. The glutes contribute just enough to avoid collapse, but not enough to rebuild strength or clarity. From the outside, everything appears functional. From the inside, the system is slowly redistributing load in ways that accelerate joint wear and fatigue. This is why some people walk daily yet feel weaker each year. The movement is real, but the conversation between brain and muscle has become faint. To understand this is to remove blame. Aging bodies are not failing. They are adapting intelligently to signals we may not even realize we are sending. When we rely solely on walking to maintain strength, we ask the nervous system to change without giving it new information. But the nervous system learns through contrast. It needs moments of stillness, clarity, and focused engagement to redraw its internal maps. Without that, it simply refines what already exists, even if what exists is incomplete. This is why the idea that sitting could restore strength feels counterintuitive at first. Yet when you remove momentum and habit, you expose the truth of muscle engagement. Sitting strips movement down to its essentials. It asks the brain to speak directly to the muscle again, without shortcuts, without compensation, without urgency. And in that quiet exchange, something long dormant begins to reawaken, not through force, but through recognition, as the body slowly remembers what it was built to do, how stability once felt, how power emerged without strain, how standing tall was not an effort but a natural consequence of muscles that knew they were needed and had not been forgotten, waiting patiently for attention to return and for the nervous system to once again invite them fully into the act of being upright and alive. One of the most profound yet misunderstood changes after 60 occurs not in the muscles themselves, but in the way the brain chooses which muscles to speak to first. Strength, in its truest biological sense, is not a property of tissue alone, it is an agreement between the nervous system and the body. When that agreement weakens, muscles do not disappear, they simply become less invited to participate. This is especially true for the gluteal muscles, which require clear, intentional signaling to stay fully engaged as the brain ages and becomes more selective with its energy. The nervous system is always prioritizing efficiency. In youth, efficiency means power and redundancy. In later years, efficiency becomes conservation. The brain begins to favor movement patterns that feel predictable and safe, even if they are mechanically inferior. This is why so many older adults unknowingly shift effort away from the hips and into the lower back or thighs. These compensations feel stable in the short term, but they quietly erode the body's structural harmony. The glutes, designed to anchor the pelvis and protect the spine, become background contributors rather than central players. Neuroscience shows that muscles remain strong only when their neural representation stays vivid. Every muscle occupies space in the brain's motor cortex. When a muscle is used with clarity and attention, that space remains well defined. When it is bypassed or underused, the brain reallocates that territory. This process is subtle and gradual, but its effects are powerful. Weakness after 60 often reflects not a lack of muscle mass, but a shrinking neural footprint. The muscle is still there, but the brain's map of it has faded. This is why simply adding more movement does not always solve the problem. If the movement repeats the same compensations, the brain reinforces the same inefficient pattern. Walking faster, walking longer, or walking more often may improve endurance, but it rarely restores lost neural clarity. In some cases, it deepens the imbalance by further strengthening the muscles that are already overworking. True restoration requires interrupting the pattern and asking the nervous system to slow down enough to notice what it has been neglecting. Slowness, in this context, is not weakness. It is precision. When a movement is slowed and simplified, the brain is forced to pay attention. Fast movement allows the nervous system to rely on momentum and habit. Slow movement removes those crutches. This is why controlled, seated glute engagement can have an outsized effect compared to standing or walking exercises. Sitting reduces the number of variables the brain must manage. Balance, impact, and fear of falling are temporarily removed. What remains is a clear question: can you feel this muscle again? That question alone changes neural behavior. When attention is directed inward, sensory feedback increases. Blood flow improves. Motor neurons fire more synchronously. The brain begins to rebuild the pathway that connects intention to action. This process is sometimes described as muscle activation, but it is more accurately described as muscle recognition. The nervous system is not commanding the muscle, it is reacquainting itself with it. Over time, this recognition carries into other movements. Standing becomes more stable not because the legs are stronger, but because the brain now knows where stability should come from. Walking becomes smoother as the hips begin to share the load again. Even posture changes, often without conscious effort. These improvements are not dramatic in a single moment, but they are profound in accumulation. They reflect a nervous system that has regained confidence in its own body. What makes this especially important after 60 is that the brain remains plastic, but it demands clarity. It no longer responds well to chaos or force. It responds to safety, simplicity, and intention. When exercises respect this reality, they stop feeling like punishment and start feeling like conversation. The body listens differently when it is not being rushed or overwhelmed. And in that quieter dialogue, muscles that seemed weak reveal that they were never truly gone, only waiting for the brain to slow down enough to remember them, to redraw their place in the internal map of movement, to restore the trust that allows strength to emerge naturally, without strain, without urgency, and without fear, as the nervous system gradually reclaims its role as a thoughtful guide rather than a desperate driver of motion. There is a subtle but powerful shift that occurs when exercise moves from standing to sitting, a shift that has little to do with convenience and everything to do with how the body experiences safety. For many people over 60, movement is no longer neutral. It carries memory. A slip, a sharp pain, a moment of instability leaves an imprint that the nervous system does not forget. Even when the mind feels confident, the body may still be cautious. Standing exercises, no matter how gentle, often activate this background vigilance. Muscles tighten defensively. Breathing becomes shallow. The brain allocates resources toward balance and threat management rather than precise muscle engagement. When the body sits, that vigilance softens. The ground feels closer. The risk of falling recedes. Joints settle into positions that feel familiar and contained. This sense of safety is not emotional, it is neurological. The brain continuously scans for risk, and when perceived risk is low, it allows more refined motor control. In this state, muscles that are usually inhibited by fear or guarding are given permission to participate. The glutes, which often disengage when the body feels unstable, respond especially well to this environment. From a physiological perspective, seated posture reduces competing demands. Standing requires constant micro-adjustments from the ankles, knees, hips, and spine. These adjustments consume neural bandwidth. For a younger nervous system, this is manageable. For an aging one, it can overwhelm the signal intended for a specific muscle group. Sitting simplifies the task. Balance is no longer the priority. Precision becomes possible. The brain can focus on sending a clear, sustained signal to the glutes without interruption. There is also an important circulatory effect. When seated upright with feet grounded, blood flow to the hips improves without the compressive forces that often accompany standing or walking. This increased circulation enhances sensory feedback, allowing the brain to better feel the muscle contracting. Sensation is the gateway to control. If the brain cannot feel a muscle, it cannot reliably strengthen it. Seated engagement restores this sensory loop gently and consistently. Many people are surprised to discover how difficult it is to contract the glutes while sitting still. This difficulty is revealing. It exposes how much modern movement relies on momentum rather than intention. Standing up from a chair, climbing stairs, or walking briskly can create the illusion of strength because other muscles assist and compensate. Sitting removes those allies. The glutes must act alone. This isolation is not about intensity, it is about honesty. The nervous system is confronted with what is actually available, not what can be borrowed. Psychologically, this honesty has a calming effect. There is no pressure to perform, no comparison, no visible measure of success. The movement is internal and quiet. This reduces stress hormones that interfere with muscle activation. Cortisol, elevated by fear or frustration, inhibits fine motor control. A calm seated environment lowers this interference, allowing cleaner neuromuscular communication. Strength begins to feel accessible rather than demanding. Over time, the brain associates glute activation with comfort instead of threat. This association matters. The nervous system learns through patterns, and when a pattern feels safe, it is more likely to be reused. As seated activation becomes familiar, the brain begins to recruit the glutes automatically during standing and walking. This transfer is not forced, it emerges naturally as the nervous system generalizes a successful strategy. There is also a deeper implication here about aging and dignity. Sitting to build strength challenges the idea that progress must be strenuous or visibly impressive. It honors the reality that bodies change, and that intelligence, not intensity, becomes the most valuable tool. Seated exercises allow people to meet their bodies where they are, without shame or urgency. They transform exercise from a test into a practice of attention. In this way, sitting is not a step backward. It is a return to fundamentals. It creates a space where the nervous system can recalibrate, where muscles can re-enter the conversation without being overshadowed by fear or fatigue. Strength rebuilt in this context tends to be durable, because it is rooted in clarity rather than compensation. And as this clarity grows, it quietly reshapes how the body moves through the world, how it trusts itself again, how stability becomes less about bracing and more about balance, less about effort and more about cooperation, as the simple act of sitting becomes a doorway back to confident movement and a reminder that safety is often the foundation upon which true strength patiently rebuilds itself. What often surprises people most is not that a seated exercise can activate the glutes, but that the effects begin to ripple far beyond the hips. When the glutes reawaken, the body reorganizes itself from the ground up. These muscles sit at a crossroads between the lower limbs and the spine, and when they function properly, they act as quiet conductors of force, distributing load with remarkable efficiency. After 60, when this system has been compromised for years, even small improvements can create noticeable changes in comfort, stability, and confidence. From a biomechanical standpoint, the glutes serve as primary stabilizers of the pelvis. When they are weak or undercommunicated, the pelvis tilts and rotates in ways that strain the lower back. The spine responds by stiffening, often interpreted as loss of flexibility, when it is actually a protective strategy. As seated activation restores glute engagement, the pelvis regains neutrality. This reduces unnecessary spinal tension and allows the vertebrae to move with less resistance. Many people notice that back discomfort eases without stretching or manipulation, simply because the body no longer needs to brace itself. The knees, too, benefit from this reorganization. The glutes help control the alignment of the femur as the leg moves. When they are inactive, the knee absorbs rotational forces it was never designed to handle. Over time, this contributes to joint irritation and instability. By restoring glute function in a controlled, low-impact way, seated exercises help redirect these forces upward, where the larger hip muscles can manage them. This shift often leads to smoother walking, reduced knee strain, and a greater sense of trust in the legs. Balance is another area where the impact becomes evident. Balance is not merely a function of the feet or inner ear, it is a whole-body conversation. The glutes play a central role in maintaining lateral stability, especially during single-leg phases of walking. When they are offline, the body compensates by tightening the calves or gripping with the toes. These strategies are inefficient and tiring. As glute activation improves, balance becomes less effortful. The body sways less, corrects more smoothly, and recovers from small perturbations with greater ease. There is also a circulatory and metabolic dimension to consider. The glutes are large muscles with significant capacity to influence blood flow and glucose utilization. When they are inactive, circulation in the hips and lower back can become sluggish. Seated activation gently increases blood movement without the spikes in heart rate or blood pressure that can accompany standing exercise. This makes it particularly valuable for individuals managing cardiovascular concerns. Improved circulation supports tissue health, nerve function, and even cognitive clarity, as the body operates more efficiently as an integrated system. Perhaps less obvious, but equally important, is the psychological shift that accompanies these physical changes. As pain decreases and movement feels more stable, fear begins to recede. Fear of falling, fear of pain, fear of doing damage often limits how people move more than physical capacity itself. When the body demonstrates, through experience, that movement can be safe and controlled, confidence returns. This confidence is not bravado, it is quiet assurance rooted in evidence. The nervous system recalibrates its expectations, allowing for more natural and fluid movement patterns. This recalibration has a compounding effect. Improved posture reduces fatigue. Reduced fatigue encourages more movement. More movement, performed with better alignment, further strengthens the system. What begins as a simple seated contraction evolves into a cascade of positive adaptations. None of this requires intensity or strain. It requires consistency and awareness, qualities that become increasingly valuable with age. There is also a subtle reclaiming of agency that occurs. When people realize they can influence their comfort and stability without pushing their bodies to extremes, exercise stops feeling like a chore. It becomes a tool for self-care and self-understanding. The body is no longer something to be fixed, but something to be supported and guided. In this sense, the true benefit of seated glute activation is not isolated strength, but systemic harmony. It reminds the body of its natural design, where large muscles do the heavy work and smaller structures are spared unnecessary stress. Over time, this harmony manifests as easier movement, less pain, and a renewed sense of trust in one's physical abilities, allowing daily life to feel less like a negotiation with limitations and more like a steady, grounded expression of capability that unfolds quietly, reliably, and with growing ease as the body learns once again how to support itself from its center outward into every step, every pause, and every moment of balance reclaimed without force or urgency. There is a moment many people experience after practicing gentle, seated activation for a few weeks when something unexpected happens. Movement begins to feel lighter, almost familiar again, as if the body is remembering an older, quieter intelligence. This is not coincidence. It reflects a deeper principle of human biology that becomes more important with age. The body thrives not on force, but on cooperation. After 60, tissues recover more slowly, joints demand respect, and the nervous system becomes exquisitely sensitive to overload. Yet this same sensitivity makes the body remarkably responsive to thoughtful, compassionate input. When exercise is framed as cooperation rather than correction, the nervous system shifts out of defense and into learning. Learning is where adaptation lives. Gentle seated glute work does not threaten the body with impact or instability. Instead, it offers a clear invitation. The brain senses that it can explore this movement without risk, and in doing so, it becomes curious rather than cautious. Curiosity is a powerful biological state. It increases sensory awareness, improves motor coordination, and reduces the stress responses that often sabotage progress in later years. This approach aligns with how the body naturally healed and strengthened itself long before modern fitness culture existed. Humans did not evolve through punishing repetition. They evolved through varied, attentive movement woven into daily life. As we age, returning to this rhythm becomes not only appropriate but necessary. Seated activation fits seamlessly into this philosophy. It does not demand special equipment or heroic effort. It asks only for presence, for a few minutes of listening inward and responding with care. There is also a profound emotional component to this kind of practice. Many older adults carry quiet frustration or grief about what their bodies can no longer do. Aggressive exercise often amplifies this feeling, turning movement into a reminder of loss. Gentle, effective practices reverse the narrative. They offer small, reliable wins. Each successful contraction becomes evidence that capability still exists. This evidence accumulates, reshaping self-perception. The body is no longer an adversary, it becomes a partner again. From a physiological standpoint, this partnership supports longevity. Chronic stress accelerates aging at the cellular level, influencing inflammation, immune function, and even gene expression. Exercises that feel safe and empowering help regulate the nervous system, reducing baseline stress. Over time, this regulation supports healthier hormonal balance, better sleep, and improved recovery. These factors are rarely associated with strength training, yet they may be among its most important outcomes after 60. What makes seated glute work particularly valuable is its sustainability. Many exercise routines fail not because they are ineffective, but because they are unsustainable. Pain, fatigue, or fear eventually interrupt consistency. A practice that can be done daily, without dread or recovery debt, has a far greater cumulative impact. The body responds more to what is repeated than to what is intense. Gentle strength, practiced often, reshapes tissues and neural pathways in ways sporadic effort never can. This sustainability extends into identity. When movement becomes something you look forward to rather than something you endure, it integrates into who you are. It becomes part of how you care for yourself, like brushing your teeth or preparing nourishing food. This integration is critical for healthy aging. Longevity is not built on isolated interventions, it is built on habits that respect both biology and humanity. There is a quiet dignity in this way of moving. It does not seek to impress. It seeks to preserve and restore. It acknowledges limits without surrendering to them. In doing so, it offers a model of aging that is grounded, intelligent, and deeply hopeful. Strength does not disappear with time, it changes its language. Seated exercises teach us to listen to that new language rather than shouting over it with outdated expectations. Ultimately, this approach invites a broader reflection on health itself. Health is not the absence of weakness, but the ability to respond wisely to change. When the body is given the right kind of attention, even small actions can produce meaningful shifts. A seated glute contraction may look simple, but beneath it lies a sophisticated dialogue between brain, muscle, and intention, a dialogue that reaffirms the body's capacity to adapt, to stabilize, and to move through the world with quiet confidence, reminding us that aging well is less about resisting time and more about learning how to move within it with respect, patience, and a renewed sense of trust that strength can be rediscovered gently, one attentive moment at a time. If you found these insights helpful and want to continue learning practical, science-backed strategies to stay healthy, strong, and vibrant as you age, don't forget to like this video, share it with friends and family who could benefit, and subscribe to our channel for daily senior wellness tips, nutrition guidance, and simple lifestyle hacks designed to enhance longevity and quality of life. Hit the notification bell so you never miss a new video that can help you live healthier, happier, and more empowered every day.